Ethan, let's go over your paper. And in using the stylistic dress-ups, which were your objectives this week, the dual verbs, dual adjectives, dual adverbs, clause with that, clause with invisible that, you did a good job on those objectives. Did not see your clause with that, or it wasn't marked. You used the invisible that. It wasn't quite right, so I gave you half credit for the try. You're always graded on spelling, capitalization, punctuation, and usage. I did find 2 punctuation errors. We'll go over that. Did not have your source or your outline, so you did not get credit for that. And because I couldn't check your citation, didn't have credit for that. And I couldn't see if you used your outline for writing. So you had some zeros there, which brought your score down significantly. But if you will submit your source and citation, your outline, I will revise your grade. I don't know, maybe you just forgot to attach it. Let's go over these punctuation errors. The first one is this colon. It would have been okay if you would have used a semicolon, because remember, a semicolon is the same as a period, but a colon is basically telling you that a list is going to follow and not necessarily a sentence, and you have a sentence after it. Polyester strings are simple. They are created with a single polyester fiber and with a thin coating. Semicolon would have been perfect there. Otherwise, you should have put a period. The other punctuation error was right here. The manufacturer, I don't know how to say this, Lexilon, should have had a comma after this also, because this is a restatement, and so this needs to be set off by commas, because you could take it out completely. The manufacturer specializes in this category and has some success. It's kind of like in a positive where you repeated just for the reader's benefit. Where you tried to use your invisible that. Let me make this bigger so I can see the whole thing. Different gauges enable you to choose between elasticity and durability. And what you've ended up doing is taking the that out, and you've created a compound verb which doesn't need a comma. And when you use an invisible that, it's tricky. It's tricky to use the invisible that. It would have been fine if you would have said different gauges that enable you to choose between elasticity and durability, make it easier on the player to get the combination he or she wants. You can't have that one as invisible. It's got to be a visible one, because this is actually our verb right there. So gauges make. Gauges that enable you to choose between elasticity and durability make it easier on the player to get the combination he or she wants. If you wanted to make it invisible, different gauges, I just can't make that one invisible. When you use an invisible that, you can pull it out and the sentence still makes sense. I was looking through here to see if I could find one. We'll keep working on that objectives, but we're going to switch gears a little bit in our writing. We've been doing a lot of informational writing, and we're going to work more on narrative writing for a little while. We'll be coming back to our informational writing, and also we will continue to use those stylistic techniques in our narrative writing. And in narrative writing just means you're the narrator. You're going to tell the story. And we're going to, sorry about that, that pops up every time, and it'll probably continue to pop up. And so in our narrative writing, we're going to use a technique called writing from pictures. And it's very easy to make stories when you write from pictures. I'm going to open a new document here, and I'm going to give you a picture. Let's see what I've got here. Let me minimize this. Here's our picture we're going to use. And remember, when we do narrative writing, conflict is king. So always keep that in mind. If we don't have a story with conflict, it's no fun. Just think about when you see a movie and there's no real conflict. It's kind of like watching a children's show like Veggie Tales or something. If you think about it, there's really no conflict at all. But adults love conflict. So here's our picture. And we're going to try to ask some questions about the picture so that we can create a conflict about our picture. And the things you're going to think about is, one, who is in the picture? What happened before the picture? Why are they doing whatever's in the picture? What's the history? Now, you're not going to have to include all of these because we're just going to start with a paragraph. But when you're developing a whole story, you've got to consider all of these. What do the characters think? What do they feel? What is going on? How is it going to happen? What is happening outside of the pictures? And what's going to happen after the pictures. So how is something going to happen? So you can look at this picture and you can see it's a boat going out on the ocean. And so you start coming up with whatever you want it to be. But remember, you want to create a conflict, because when we do narrative writing and we're the narrators, we want a conflict. We want something to happen that's going to cause someone to be in peril. So, and you don't necessarily have to create a big conflict in these first exercises, but as we get into some longer narrative writing, we're going to want to create conflict. So who is in the story? And we could just say John and Stephen. And you can just make up whatever you want. And what happened before? So something had to cause John and Stephen to want to get in that boat. And let's say they got in that boat because they are being pursued for a crime they didn't commit. And why are they being pursued? Let's say they look like the two people seen in the vicinity of the crime. In the history, let's just say they decided to flee on a boat because they want to leave the country undetected. So you can see I could just make this into an elaborate story. What do they think? They think the justice system will fail them because they don't have an alibi. I don't know how to spell alibi. And what do they feel? They feel, let's just say, persecuted. What is going on, or what is happening? The boat is leaving the dock. How is it leaving? Quietly at, let's pretend it's dawn. What's happening outside of the picture? Let's say police are what could they be doing? The police could be in pursuit. They could be checking other boats. How about they are checking out other suspects? And what's going to happen after? See, we could make it pretty elaborate. We could have the police wire this boat or send a telegram or whatever they send out to ships or boats and say that they have apprehended and someone confessed to the crime, and so they can come back. So I made all that up from one picture. And so I'm going to give you a picture, or you can pick out a picture. I'll probably give you a picture. And you're going to answer these questions about it, and then you're going to write about it. And I'd like to open another Word document. And getting to do this type of writing is a lot of fun, in that you can just use your imagination. And of course, some people are more imaginative than others, but we want to create a conflict. And we want to try and bring in as many of these things as possible into the story. And as we get into more elaborate writing, and we will not get into it this year, this year we'll introduce a lot of the types of writings, but they won't be long excerpts. We will do longer excerpts and longer narrative writing in the next level. Okay, let's just kind of start with some of the questions that we answered, the answers to them. Oh, I want that definitely bigger, so let's go with times and at least 12 point. It was Dawn, and John and Steve had just boarded the small vessel that would take them to Mexico. John was worried. He knew the police were interviewing people, but all the facts in the case seemed to point to John and Steve's guilt in the murder of the, and we could just, you can get so elaborate with these, in the murder of the mayor of the small fishing village. And see, as I bring in these facts, they have to be explained later. But we're going to start with one paragraph. And of course, we want to double space it. Okay, so I've said who was in there. I said they're being pursued for a crime. They look like the two people. They think justice will fail them. Well, I didn't put this in there, but all the facts seem to point to John and Steve guilt in the murder of the mayor of the small fishing village. John and Steve knew it was a case of mistaken identity. They knew they weren't there, but every witness described two men matching their description. I can't remember how to spell description. Hopefully Word will help me out here. That's why I love Word. There we go, matching their description. Steve had more belief in the justice system, but John had seen the system fail before, and he didn't want to be another victim of a corrupt justice, of how about say of corrupt lawyers in a small town. Okay, so let's see what I have actually included here. Okay, who? Okay, I've got that. Yes, I put that in there. I did put that in there. They're about to leave the country undetected. I said they were going to go to Mexico. I didn't say it was undetected. So if I want to put that in there, boarded the small vessel that would take them quietly from the U.S. to Mexico. Okay, so I have that. And that's what John thinks. John feels persecuted. They're about to leave. They're leaving quietly. The police are checking out. So hopefully I created some conflict, and we want to know what happens. So we have to, it's really not really a lot of conflict other than they're getting ready to leave. They are being pursued by the police, and of course all good conflict usually has the police or medical drama in it. So kind of keep that in mind as you're working to create some conflict. You have to have a good guy and a bad guy always. So what's going to happen after? So we're going to have to kind of put a teaser in there about what's going to happen after. They knew they weren't there. Oh, that scares me every time. It was dawn, and John and Steve had just boarded the small vessel that would take them quietly from the U.S. to Mexico. John was worried. He knew the police were interviewing people, but all the facts in the case seemed to point to John and Steve's guilt in the murder of the mayor of the small fishing village. John and Steve knew it was a case of mistaken identity. They knew they weren't there, but every witness described two men matching their description. Steve had more belief in the justice system than John. But John had seen the system fail before, and he didn't want to be another victim of a corrupt lawyer in a small town. Little did they know that, this is my after because I didn't really answer it. Little did they know that another murder was about to happen in the next town by the same two men that killed the mayor. This crime would prove their innocence if only this crime would prove their innocence. But they were beginning a life on the run. Okay, I don't know if I created a conflict or not. And you can tell I watch a lot of Law and Order. So you don't have to have a scene like this. But I'll give you a picture and go down through it and think of the answers to these questions and then try and write a paragraph about it. Try and create a conflict. And you know, this is kind of an intro paragraph, and then we could develop a whole story off of this and do a backstory about these people and what happened to John and why he had been a victim of a corrupt lawyer. So we could do a whole backstory about this one picture. But our story is going to start with this one picture. And at this point, don't worry about putting any dress-ups in, just see if you can answer these questions. So answer all your questions for me and write your paragraph, and let me see your answers to your questions. And so we're going to be spending the next few weeks on some narrative writing. That's the end of the video.